The night sky above the alien city was filled with glowing towers and shining lights, but in one small corner of that city, where the shadows were deep and silence ruled, an alien girl sat alone. She was young, her eyes still bright with the fire of dreams, but her body no longer obeyed her. Once she had been a dancer of her people. Her steps were light as air. Her movements praised in every hall. She had danced under the twin moons. She had danced in the great gatherings where voices cheered her name, but that life had ended in a single cruel moment, an accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down. Her people had no use for the broken. The strong were honored, the weak forgotten. They gave her no comfort, no hope. They left her in a corner house, with food enough to survive, but nothing more. They whispered as they passed, forsaken, useless, a shadow of what she was. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. She watched the world move without her. Laughter fading from her memory. Her heart ached, but her body refused to respond. She prayed sometimes to the stars, but the stars gave no answer. Slowly, she accepted the cruel truth her life was over. Then one day, a stranger came. He was not of her people. His body was strange, his skin pale, his eyes deep and human. He walked through the market with steady steps, his gaze sharper than anyone she had seen before. He looked at the goods, he looked at the people, but then his eyes found her. She expected him to turn away like the others, to ignore her broken form, but he did not. He walked closer. His steps stopped before her seat, and he simply looked at her, not with pity, not with disgust, but with something she had not seen in years. "You're alone," he said. In his strange accent, his voice was calm, steady, like flowing water. The girl lowered her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, her voice almost broken. "I am alone because I cannot walk, because I am nothing now." The human did not laugh. He did not leave. Instead, he knelt so his eyes were level with hers. "Nothing." He repeated softly, "No, I do not believe that." Her heart trembled. For so long, no one had spoken to her with such weight in their words. She searched his face, looking for lies, but found none. "You should not waste your time," she told him. "I am forsaken. I am broken. My people left me, and I will never rise again." The human's eyes narrowed as if he rejected every word she said. He shook his head. "Your people are wrong," he said. "A broken body is not a broken soul, and no one is truly forsaken unless they choose to be." Her breath caught. The words pierced deeper than she expected. She wanted to believe them, but fear chained her heart. "You don't know what it's like," she whispered, "to feel nothing in your legs, to wake up and know you will never move again." He studied her quietly, and then he placed his hand on his chest. "Maybe I don't know your pain, but I know mine," he said. "And I know pain is not the end. It is only a wall, and walls can be broken." The girl blinked. Her people had mocked her, shamed her, abandoned her. Yet this stranger, this human, spoke as if she still had worth. He spoke as if her story was not finished. The human stood then, and his shadow fell across her broken form. "If you want to walk again, I will not stop until I find a way," he said firmly. Her lips parted, shocked. For a long moment, she simply stared at him. Was he mocking her? Was this another cruel joke? But no, there was no laughter in his eyes. Only promise, only fire. In the distance, a group of aliens saw the human speaking to her. They laughed among themselves. "Look at him, wasting words on the cripple." One said, "Humans are fools. They chase impossible dreams." Another sneered, but the girl ignored them. Her heart beat faster. A human was offering her what her own people never had hope. She lowered her gaze again. Not ready to show the storm inside her, "You cannot." "Help me," she whispered. "No one can." The human bent closer, his voice firm but gentle. "That is where you are wrong," he said. "I can. And I will." And then he walked away, leaving her with words that burned in her chest. For the first time in years, she felt something she thought had died inside her, hope mixed with fear. She stared after him long into the night. The voices of the crowd faded, the stars above shone, and her heart whispered a question she could not silence. Why does this human not turn away from me like the others? The alien girl sat awake that night, her eyes fixed on the stars outside her window. The human's words echoed again and again in her mind. "If you want to walk again, I will not stop until I find a way." No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even before the accident, her people had praised her beauty and her dancing. But those words were shallow, easy to give. The human's words were heavy, they carried a strange weight. For years, she had only heard whispers of pity and laughter of mockery. But now, for the first time, she heard a voice that made her believe. Or at least, want to believe. The next morning, she expected him to vanish like a dream. Yet when the sun rose over the alien city, the human returned. He carried nothing but a small bag slung over his shoulder. His steps were strong, and his eyes were steady. "You came back," she said softly, surprise hidden in her tone. "Of course," he answered. "A promise is not a thing I break." Her heart fluttered at those words. Her people made promises easily, but they broke them just as easily. A promise from them meant nothing, but this human spoke as though his promise was carved into stone. He sat beside her and asked gently, "Do you want to tell me your name?" She hesitated. It had been so long since anyone had cared to ask. Finally, she whispered, "My name is Lyra." The human gave a small smile. "Lyra," he repeated, as if tasting the sound. "My name is Daniel." The name felt strange on her tongue, but not unpleasant. She whispered it back, "Daniel." And for some reason, the simple act of saying it made her feel less alone. From that day, Daniel visited her every sunrise. Sometimes he brought small tools from his bag. Sometimes he brought strange devices made of metal and wire. He examined her legs, her back, her spine. His hands were careful, his eyes sharp. He spoke little while he worked, but when he did, his words carried comfort. The other aliens noticed quickly. They gathered in small groups and whispered. Some laughed loudly. "Look at the human fool," they said, "wasting his time on a broken thing." Others shook their heads. "He is interfering with fate. She was forsaken. He should leave her to the dust." But Daniel ignored them. He did not even glance their way. His focus remained on Lyra. She asked him once, "Why do you help me? Why not leave me like everyone else?" He looked at her, his eyes serious. "Because no one deserves to be thrown away," he said. "Because I see someone worth saving, not someone to abandon." Her breath caught at those words. She had no answer. She could only lower her eyes. Hiding the heat in them, days turned into weeks. Daniel worked patiently. Sometimes he massaged her legs. Sometimes he pressed strange needles into her skin. At first, she felt nothing. Only the same cold emptiness that haunted her since the accident. But slowly, very slowly, there were changes. One evening, as the moons rose high, Daniel pressed a small metal rod to her thigh. He told her to focus. "Tell me if you feel anything," he said. At first she was silent. Then her eyes widened. A faint spark ran through her. Her lips trembled. I felt something," she whispered. Daniel's eyes lit up with quiet fire. He nodded. "Good. That means your nerves are not dead. They are only sleeping." Her heart raced. It was the first time in years she had felt anything in her legs, even if it was small, even if it was weak. For her, it was a miracle. The next day, she tried to hide her excitement, afraid it was only luck. But again, with Daniel's tools, the spark came. A little stronger than before, she gasped. tears filling her eyes. "It's real. It's real," she whispered. Daniel gave a small smile. "I told you, Lyra, this is only the beginning," but not everyone was pleased. The whispers in the streets grew darker. Some of her people said, "This is dangerous. The human is playing with forbidden things." Others said, "He only wants to use her. He will leave." Her broken again, Lyra heard their voices, but for the first time. She did not let them poison her heart. She thought of Daniel's steady eyes, his strong voice, his unbroken promise, and she felt a strange shield around her spirit. One evening, as he packed his tools, she asked him quietly, "Why do you believe in me so much?" Daniel paused, his gaze meeting hers. "Because I know what it feels like to be left behind," he said, his voice low. "But I promised myself I would never let another suffer that way if I could stop it." His words sank deep, and she understood he was not only healing her body, he was healing something inside himself too. The night grew quiet, and as she looked at him, her heart whispered something she dared not say aloud. Maybe, just maybe, this human was not lying. Maybe, just maybe, he was the answer to the prayer she thought the stars had ignored. Lyra sat by the window of her small dwelling. The alien city glowed with bright towers, voices, and moving lights, but for her, the world had always been silent, distant, untouchable. Yet now, for the first time in years, she felt something stirring. Inside her, a small spark of hope. Daniel came again that morning. His steps were steady, his bag carried against his shoulder. He set his tools carefully on the table, as he always did. His routine never changed, but to Lyra, every day with him felt like a step closer to something new. He began his work in silence, pressing small rods to her legs, adjusting wires. Sometimes he asked her to breathe slowly. Sometimes he told her to focus her mind. The faint sparks grew, stronger with each attempt. At first, they were just tiny shocks, but now she could almost sense where his hand touched. Her heart raced every time it happened. For years, her body had been like dead stone. Now, little by little, it whispered back to her. "You are improving," Daniel said quietly. His voice carried no doubt, only truth. She looked at him, her lips trembling. "Do you really think I can walk again?" His eyes met hers, firm and unshaken. "Yes, Lyra, I do." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe, and though fear still haunted her, his certainty made her feel strong. Stronger than she had felt since the day of the accident that evening. After his work was done, Daniel did not leave right away. He sat beside her, watching the twin moons rise through the window. The silence between them was soft, not heavy like before. "Tell me," he said gently, "what was your life before this?" Her chest tightened. No one had asked her this in years. Her people only saw her as broken. They never cared to remember who she had once been. "I was a dancer," she whispered. Her eyes grew distant, lost in memory. "I danced under the moons. I danced in the great gatherings. I was called the star of our people. When I moved, the halls would go silent. And when I finished, the halls would roar with joy." A small smile touched her lips, then faded. "But all of that ended the day I fell in a single moment. My body was crushed, and everything I was disappeared." Daniel's gaze stayed on her, never looking away. "No," he said softly, "it did not disappear. You are still Lyra. You are still the star they chose to forget. But I see it in you." Still, her heart trembled. The words broke through the wall she had built inside. For so long she had buried her past because it hurt too much. But now, hearing him say she was still herself, it made her feel alive again. She lowered her gaze. "You speak as if you know me better than I know myself." Daniel's lips curved in a faint smile. "Sometimes the broken see themselves as nothing, but to others they still shine." She looked away quickly, afraid he might see the tears forming in her eyes. In the following days, her progress continued. Her body reacted more. Sometimes her toes twitched faintly, once her thigh muscles trembled. It was small, but to her, it was everything. Every night when she closed her eyes, she felt something, new possibility. But with hope came danger. The whispers of her people grew louder. Some came to watch Daniel work, their eyes filled with disbelief. "Impossible," they muttered. "The Forsaken cannot rise." Others spat with anger. "The human is playing tricks. He should be stopped." One day, a group of young aliens approached as Daniel was leaving her home. They laughed harshly. "Why do you waste your time, human? She is broken. She is nothing. You could spend your strength elsewhere." Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned his head slightly, his voice calm but sharp. "You see nothing because you choose to see nothing," he said. "That is your weakness." "Not hers," they sneered, but had no answer. And Daniel walked away without another glance. His strength made Lyra's chest swell with quiet pride. That night, as Daniel checked her legs, she whispered, "They mock you. They mock me. Why do you not leave?" He looked at her, his face shadowed by the dim light. "Because I keep my promises," he said firmly. "And because you are worth more than their laughter." Her throat tightened. She had no answer, only her heart, beating louder than it had. In years, told her the truth, later, when he was gone. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She remembered the whispers of her people, the loneliness, the years of silence. But now there was a new sound. Daniel's voice, strong and certain, echoing in her mind. For the first time since her accident, she felt as if she was not drowning anymore. She felt like someone was pulling her back to the surface, her hand clenched weakly, her eyes wet with tears. She whispered to herself, for the first time in years, "I dare to hope again." The days passed quickly, and every morning Daniel returned to Lyra's side. His tools hummed with faint energy, his hands worked with patience, and little by little, her body responded, her toes twitched, her legs trembled. Sometimes she even felt warmth in her muscles. These small changes were like miracles to her. But to her people, they were sparks of anger. Rumors spread across the alien city, in the markets, in the gathering halls. In the quiet streets, voices whispered, "The human interferes with fate." Some said, "The girl was forsaken. She was left broken for a reason." Others muttered, their words carried venom. And soon, those whispers turned into warnings. One evening, as Daniel prepared his tools in Lyra's home, a group of elders appeared at the doorway. Their faces were stern, their robes heavy with symbols of power. They looked at Daniel as if he were an intruder, and their eyes swept over Lyra with cold judgment. "She is not meant to be healed," one elder said firmly. His voice was deep, filled with authority. "She was abandoned because the gods of our people willed it so. Your actions insult the will of fate." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, but fear held her voice. The elders were respected by all, and she had no strength to argue. But Daniel rose to his feet. His eyes were steady, his voice calm but strong. "I do not care for your gods," he said. "I care for her life. I care for her hope. No one deserves to be left in the dust like this." Gasps filled the room. The elders stiffened. For a moment it seemed they might strike him, but instead they turned sharply, their robes flowing. "You are a fool. Human," the leader spat. "Your work will bring you nothing but ruin." When they left, silence filled the small home. Lyra's hands shook faintly. "You should not have spoken against them," she whispered. "They are powerful. They can make your life here very hard." Daniel sat again, his face calm. "Then let them try," he said. "I am not here for them. I am here for you." Her heart pounded at those words. No one had ever chosen her over the power of the elders. His defiance lit something inside her. The next day, the threats began. Small stones were thrown at Daniel. In the marketplace, strangers spat at his feet. Merchants raised their prices whenever he approached. "Leave the cripple and go," they mocked. "Humans are weak. You cannot change what is already dead." But Daniel did not stop. He continued to visit Lyra every sunrise. He continued his work without pause. And every time her leg twitched, every time she gasped at a faint spark of life, his determination grew stronger one evening as the sun dipped behind the towers. Daniel asked her to try something new. He supported her under her arms and carefully helped her sit upright on a special frame he had built. Her body shook, her breath came fast. But for the first time in years, she sat tall, not slumped. Tears spilled down her face. I feel like myself again," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her spirit soared. Daniel held her steady, his own eyes shining faintly. "This is only the beginning," he said. But shadows were closing in. That same night, a group of angry aliens surrounded Daniel in the streets. Their eyes were hard, their voices sharp. "Leave her or face what comes," one hissed. "You are breaking our traditions. You are shaming our people." Daniel did not flinch. His hand rested calmly on the strap of his bag. His voice cut through the air like steel. "If your traditions demand that you abandon the weak, then your traditions are nothing but chains." The crowd growled, but Daniel's steady gaze silenced them. At last they turned away, muttering threats as they disappeared into the night. When Daniel returned to Lyra's side, she noticed the dust on his clothes, the faint scratches on his arms. "What happened?" she asked quickly, fear in her voice. "Nothing worth speaking of," he said quietly. But his eyes gave away the truth. He had faced them for her sake, and he would face them again if needed. Her heart ached. Her people had abandoned her, mocked her, and even threatened him. Yet this human, who owed her nothing, chose to fight for her. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Why do you risk so much for me?" Daniel looked at her, his expression serious. "Because I know what it is like to be left behind," he said. "And because no one should suffer that fate alone." Lyra's breath caught. She had no answer, only the silent tears that rolled down her cheeks spoke for her. That night, she lay awake, her mind full of fear and hope. She knew the price of her healing was growing heavier. The anger of her people was no longer just whispers. It was action. Daniel was standing against all of them, and she feared they might one day break him. But deep inside, she also felt something stronger than fear. For the first time since the accident, she wanted to live. She wanted to fight. Not just for herself, but for him too. As the moons rose high above the city, she whispered into the darkness, "If he must stand against an entire world to save me, then I will stand with him." The dawn came with soft light spilling over the alien city. The towers glowed in the early sun, and the streets slowly filled with voices and movement. But inside Lyra's small home, something greater than the sunrise was happening. Daniel stood beside her, his hands steady on her arms. Lyra's legs trembled, but they held her weight. Her breaths came sharp, sweat lined her brow. But her spirit burned with determination. Today was not about trying to walk. Today was about proving she could. Step by step, she moved across the room, each step stronger than the last, each step shaking away years of despair. Daniel guided her only when needed, but most of the strength came from her own will. At the doorway, she stopped, her eyes wide with wonder. "I walked all the way," she whispered. Her voice broke with joy, without falling. Daniel's lips curved in a rare smile. "Yes, Lyra, you did. You are free from the chains of your past." Tears filled her eyes. She turned to look outside. a small crowd had gathered again, drawn by the sound of her steps. Their eyes were wide, their faces pale, for the first time. She did not feel shame under their gaze. For the first time, she stood tall before them. One of the elders stepped forward, his robe dragging against the ground. His voice shook as he spoke. "It is true then. The forsaken girl has risen. The human has done what we thought impossible," the crowd murmured. Some bowed their heads in guilt, others in awe. Many remembered how they had turned their backs on her, and now shame burned in their hearts. Lyra lifted her chin, her voice clear. "Yes, I was forsaken, left to rot in silence. You all decided. I was nothing, but look at me now. I rise because a human gave me what my own people would not faith." She glanced at Daniel, her eyes soft. "He gave me a second chance." The words cut deep into the crowd. No one laughed now. No one mocked. For the first time in years, they listened, truly listened. Daniel stood quietly, his presence steady. He had never sought their respect, but now, without asking, it came one by one. Members of the crowd lowered their heads to him, their pride bent under the truth. The elder spoke again, his voice heavy, human. "You have shown us our weakness. We abandoned her, but you raised her up. For that, we bow to you." And slowly he lowered himself, bowing low. The others followed. Until the street was filled with silence and lowered heads, Lyra's heart raced. She had once dreamed of this moment. The moment her people would see her again, not as broken, but as whole. Yet she knew this moment was not hers alone. It belonged to Daniel, the man who had refused to give up on her. She turned to him, her voice trembling. "They see now, but I saw long before them. I saw your strength, your faith, Daniel, and I will never leave your side." Daniel looked at her, his expression calm. But his eyes revealed something deeper. "Then we walk forward together," he said softly, in the days that followed. Lyra's steps grew stronger. She no longer needed the frame. Her balance returned, her body awakened fully. The city that once mocked her now watched with silent respect as she moved freely through the streets. Some tried to speak to her again, but she only nodded politely. She had no need for their empty words anymore. Her strength was not just in her legs, but in her spirit. She had learned what true loyalty meant, what true courage looked like, and it had come not from her people, but from a human. One night, as they sat under the twin moons, Lyra looked at Daniel, her voice soft. "Do you know what you gave me?" Daniel tilted his head. "Your steps back," he said simply. She shook her head. "More than that, you gave me myself back. You gave me a future. You gave me life." Her eyes glistened. "And I will spend that life by your side." Silence stretched between them, not heavy, but full of meaning. Daniel said nothing, but the faint smile that touched his lips spoke enough. The city slowly changed. The story of the forsaken girl who walked again spread beyond her street, beyond her district, until even distant halls whispered of her and the human who healed her. Some called her a symbol. Others called her a miracle. But to Lyra, she was simply someone who had been given a second chance. She stood one evening before a large crowd, her voice steady. "Do not turn away from the weak. Do not abandon the broken, for one day the weak may rise stronger than you, and the broken may show you what true strength looks like." The crowd was silent, her words sinking into their hearts. And when she stepped down, Daniel was waiting for her. His hands steady, his presence unshakable. Lyra placed her hand in his, and together they walked, not as a human and a forsaken alien, but as two souls who had stood against despair and won. Her story would be told for generations. The girl who was paralyzed, alone, and forsaken, but who rose again because a human refused to let her fall, And as she walked beside him, her heart whispered the truth. What was forsaken has now become. The morning air was cool, and soft light poured through the window of Lyra's small home. She sat quietly, her heart beating fast as Daniel adjusted the frame he had built for her. It was taller, stronger now. Designed to hold her body upright, today felt different. Today felt heavy with something new. Daniel looked at her calmly. His eyes were steady. His voice gentle but firm. "You are ready, Lyra," he said. "Not just your body, but your spirit too. Today you will try to take your first step." Her chest tightened. Fear clawed at her heart. For years she had been paralyzed. For years she had believed she would never walk again. What if she failed? What if her body betrayed her in front of him? But when she looked into Daniel's eyes, she saw no doubt, only faith. And his faith gave her strength. He helped her into the frame, supporting her under the arms. Her legs trembled as he strapped them into place. Sweat broke across her brow. Her breaths came fast. "I can't." She whispered, "I will fall." Daniel shook his head. His voice cut through her fear. "You will not fall. I am here. Every step you take, I will be with you." Slowly, carefully, he guided her forward. Her left foot dragged slightly. Then, with a trembling twitch, it moved just an inch, just a fraction of a step, but it was movement. Her eyes widened, tears filled them instantly. I moved," she gasped. Her voice was full of disbelief and wonder. Daniel's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Yes, Lyra, you moved. Now again." The second step was harder. Her body shook. Her legs screamed with weakness. But his, steady. Hands kept her upright. Sweat rolled down her face. But then her right foot shifted. Small but undeniable, she cried out. Not from pain, but from joy. "I did it," she whispered. "Daniel, I did it." For years she had been nothing but a shadow, broken and forgotten. Now she stood upright, trembling but alive, moving forward. The sound of her weak steps echoed louder in her mind than any music she had once danced to. Daniel steadied her. His voice quiet but strong. "You are walking." Again, Lyra. Her chest swelled with emotion. For a moment, she could not breathe. She could only cry, her tears falling freely. "The forsaken girl," she whispered, "is walking again, but outside, unseen by her." A small crowd had gathered. Word of the human's work had spread, and many came to witness. At first, they stood in silence. Then gasps broke through. "Impossible," one said. "The cripple walks," another muttered. Some looked with awe, some with fear, but many with shame. They had abandoned her, mocked her, and now they watched as the human gave her what they never could. Lyra heard the whispers and turned her head. Her eyes widened when she saw them. The same faces that had once spat at her. The same voices that had called her useless were now staring with disbelief. Fear returned for a moment, but Daniel's voice steadied her. "Do not look at them," he said softly. "Look at me. Only me." She nodded faintly and with trembling strength, she took another step, then another, each one small. Each one painful, but each one hers. The crowd began to murmur louder. Some stepped back, some leaned forward. No one laughed now, no one dared. An elder appeared at the edge of the crowd, his eyes widened, his face pale. He whispered something no one had ever expected to hear from him. "The forsaken has risen." Daniel supported Lyra as she sank back into the chair. Exhausted but glowing with pride, her breaths came heavy, her body ached. But her spirit soared. "I did it," she whispered, her voice breaking with joy. "Daniel, I walked." He crouched before her, his eyes soft but shining with quiet pride. "Yes, Lyra, you did. And this is only the beginning." The crowd slowly dispersed. Some muttering in fear, others in awe, A few stayed longer, their faces heavy with guilt, but none spoke. They all knew the truth. They had abandoned her, and a human had saved her. That night, as Daniel packed his tools, Lyra whispered, "I was afraid. But you believed in me more than I believed in myself." Daniel's eyes met hers. That is what it means to stand with someone. He said, "When they cannot believe, you believe for them." Her heart tightened. Her people had abandoned her, but this man, this human, had stood by her side against everyone, and because of him, she had taken her first step when he left. She lay awake in her small home. Her body was sore, her muscles weak, but her spirit burned with new fire. She replayed the moment over and over, the trembling step, the gasps of the crowd, the steady support of Daniel's hands for the first time since her accident. She felt not like a burden, but like a person again. She whispered into the silence, her voice filled with trembling joy. The forsaken girl walks once more the next morning. Lyra woke with sore muscles, every part of her body ached, yet the pain was sweeter than anything she had known in years. It was proof that she had moved, proof that her legs were no longer lifeless stone. She touched her knees gently and whispered to herself. I walked when Daniel arrived. He found her sitting straighter, her eyes brighter. She smiled. Faintly, something she had not done in a long time. I feel alive, she told him. Her voice was soft, but her spirit shone through. Daniel gave a small nod, his lips curving into the faintest smile. Good, because today you will try again. The hours that followed were filled with sweat and struggle. Her steps were slow, each one trembling, but each one stronger than the last. Her body shook, her breaths came heavy, yet she refused to stop. And every time her foot shifted forward, Daniel's steady voice guided her. Again, Lyra, again. By evening, she was exhausted, but she had walked more than she thought possible. She sat in her chair, her body weak but her spirit soaring. She looked at Daniel, her eyes wet with tears. I am not broken anymore, she whispered. He crouched before her, his eyes steady. You were never broken, Lyra. You were only waiting for the moment to rise again. Her heart swelled at his words. She had once believed her life was over, but now she saw something different. She saw herself not as a burden, not as a shadow, but as someone who could rise stronger than before. Word of her steps spread quickly across the city. Whispers filled the air. The forsaken girl walks, some said with awe. The human has done the impossible, others muttered, but not all were pleased. Some whispered with jealousy, some with anger. If she rises, it means we were wrong, they grumbled. And if we were wrong, then everything we believe may crumble. One afternoon, Lyra practiced standing near her doorway. A small group gathered outside. They were not mocking now. Their eyes were filled with shame and unease. One finally spoke. We left you. We thought you were lost. He admitted, but you rise again. Lyra looked at them, and for the first time, she felt no fear. Her voice, though soft, carried weight. Yes, you left me, but I was never lost. I only needed someone who still believed in me. She glanced at Daniel beside her, his steady presence like a pillar, and he did. The group lowered their eyes. Some walked away silently, unable to meet her gaze for the first time. It was not she who bowed her head in shame, but them. Later that night, Daniel worked quietly, adjusting her legs and checking her muscles. Lyra watched him, her heart full of questions. Finally, she whispered, Why do you keep fighting for me, Daniel? You risk anger, you risk harm, and still you stay. Daniel paused, his eyes lifting to meet hers. Because you remind me of something I almost lost in myself, he said, his voice low. The will to stand. The will to keep moving, even when the world tries to break you. Her chest tightened. She did not know how to answer. Instead, she only whispered, "Then I will not let your fight be wasted." The following days were filled with progress. Her steps grew steadier, her balance stronger. Daniel guided her less, letting her weight rest on her own trembling legs. She fell sometimes, her knees striking the floor, but she rose again each time, refusing to give in. The neighbors began to watch in silence. Some still whispered in disbelief. But others began to see her not as a cursed shadow, but as a symbol. The forsaken girl was no longer forsaken. She was rising before their very eyes. One evening, as the twin moons painted silver light across the city, Daniel and Lyra walked slowly outside her home. Her steps were shaky, but she walked on her own. When voices rose from the crowd, she stopped and turned. Her people stared, waiting for her to speak. For years, they had ignored her. But now, their eyes were on her again. Her heart pounded. Yet her voice was calm. "You all left me. You all decided I was nothing. But I was never nothing." She lifted her chin. "This human gave me what you would not faith, and because of him, I rise again." A hush fell over the crowd. Some lowered their eyes, some turned away. A few whispered with awe, but none dared to laugh. Daniel stood quietly beside her, saying nothing. But in her heart, Lyra felt his strength. She was no longer speaking as a broken girl. She was speaking as someone who had found new strength. That night, when she sat by the window, she whispered into the quiet, "Together, we will change everything."